Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 8 of a year of change. We're starting up a new week, so got myself all shaved up and tarted up, looking good, and my Poo shirt is all nice and neat and tidy. This week we're sort of going to start things into the proper program. Throughout the past week, we've sort of touched on a lot of heavier subjects. No pun intended. Yuck, yuck. But things that we needed to get out of the way. So it's going to be a little bit easier from now on. I just sort of wanted to set the stage there. And more importantly, you've taken this week and sort of gotten used to tracking your food. The majority of you are going to go over your number, which is fine. But I just sort of wanted to get you into that pattern of, seeing what we're eating, tracking everything that you're putting in, and, just sort of get into that mindset so that when we do finally start everything off this week, it's not just going to be, one big massive change all at once. So for this week, of course, the first thing that we need to do is your weigh-in. Now, same as last week, what I'd like you to do is weigh yourself 3 times and take the highest number. That's going to be our baseline every single time. Because although, you might want to say, well, no, if I take the lower number, then I've lost an extra pound or whatever. I want to keep things as realistic as possible. So if we always take the highest number, then, we have a good baseline each and every time, and it's not going to fluctuate as much as, it would otherwise. Now, for the vast majority of you, you're not going to see any change at all this week, which is fine, because we haven't really changed our eating habits. But at least with this, again, sort of getting into that pattern that once a week we're going to do this. Now, to actually put in your check-in, you want to go up to MyFitnessPal on a computer. You can't really do it from the app. And you'll see a spot there where it does say to check in. So when you click on that, it'll get you to put your new weight in and then just hit save. And, although you may not see much of a change now, and in some cases might actually see an increase, throughout the course of this year, when you have those 52 entries at the end of the year, you are going to see a difference. It is going to change. So, again, sort of look at the big picture as opposed to, week by week, because the changes that we're making are going to be so small that it's going to be a long time before we see any significant progress. And for some of you, it might be, 2 or 3 months before you start seeing any changes. You're going to feel them before you're probably going to see them. And in some cases, it's, especially for those of you that, may not have as much to lose as I do, if you're exercising at the same time, you might start building, muscle, which is heavier than fat. So you are going to see a fluctuation off and on. But throughout the course of a year, you will see a change. So when you start getting discouraged and things like that, just remember that this is a long-term thing. This isn't a short-term diet or something that you're going to say, oh, well, I ate at Christmas and I want to be good for spring. This is going to be 12 months, to get where we need to be. So once you've done your check-in, you can do measurements if you want as well. I still haven't found my measuring tape, so I'm not doing them. There's not a lot I can do. For some of you, you're going to want to lose inches more than weight if that's going to be your focus. But again, for right now, we're just worried about, getting into a pattern. So once you've done your check-in, unless you've lost a tremendous amount of weight during this first week, your calorie goals are going to stay the same. Your number won't have changed. It only changes, I think, every 10 pounds. And it will do it automatically. And when it does change, it drops down, less than 100 calories. So it's going to be very, very small. So let's assume that, just for the sake of this video, that your goal is 2,000 calories. All right, it's a nice round number. And, some of you are going to have more, some of you are going to have less. But we'll use that as our baseline. So the goal for this week is going to be very simple. All we need to do is to stay below that number. We aren't going to worry about, the type of food that you're going to be eating. If you want to spend it all on, chips and, deep fried stuff and cakes, that's fine as long as you don't go below the number. We're mainly concerned with just the caloric intake right now. We'll get to, the different types of foods and like sugars and carbohydrates and all that other stuff way down the line. But for right now, we just want to sort of curb the calories that are going into our bodies. And as long as you stay below that, then that's your only goal for the week. And for the vast majority of us, it's going to be fairly simple. I mean, you're probably staying, fairly close to it now. And in order to just sort of stay below it, it's going to be something minimal, like one less can of, soda pop, or, something like, or actually, now that I mentioned that, ignore that part. One less Twinkie. For this week, right now, for the next probably a couple of weeks, don't track fluids. Because although a lot of them have a lot of calories in them, like pop and juice and stuff like that, we're mainly worried about the food intake at this point. So once we start tracking fluids, down the line, then, we can worry about it that way. But for right now, don't worry about fluids. So if you find that, it's the end of the day, it's, 11:30 at night, and you've got 50 calories left and you're still hungry, you can grab something to, sort of tide you over until the morning without having to worry about it. Now, those are still going to add calories to it, so this tracking isn't going to be 100% accurate. You'll be actually very surprised how many calories go into fluids. But again, for right now, we're taking very small steps, and this is the first one, is just make sure that your food count is below that number. Same thing with condiments, like mayonnaise and mustard and ketchup, stuff that you would put on a hamburger or a sandwich, something like that. Don't worry about counting that. If you're going to have, obviously, something like, if you're eating chips and you have a dip, you need to count the dip, because it's, it's going to be a lot of calories, and, it's usually that's going to add 100 or 200 calories, and a dip really isn't a condiment. So for something like that, definitely count it. And like desserts or, like things like pudding, stuff like that. But just regular condiments and liquids, don't worry about those. You don't need to track those. As I said, we're going to do that later on down the road, in a couple of weeks. Then we'll start tracking those, because by then you're going to have your eating habits sort of curbed, and we're going to be adding more stuff. The first 2 or 3 food changes that we're actually going to be making are additions to food, not necessarily taking away. Because you're going to find that as you're doing this, because you're trying to stay below that number, you're going to curb your own eating habits. And it's not going to be, anything major. A good example, I think I may have mentioned it before, is, one thing I was really surprised at was I expected fried chicken to have a lot more calories in it than it does. So if you're to a point where, you're saying, well, if I have one more piece of chicken, it's going to put me over, then, instead of going for, the thigh, which is like 300 calories or whatever, go for a drumstick, which is 200. It's, you still have that other piece of chicken. It's just having a different piece can, make all the difference. And as you go through this, what you're going to find as well is that you're going to be, a little more conscious as to the calories. So when you're looking at something, or if you're going to a fast food place, a lot of them have, little nutritional menus. It'll give you an idea as to what you can put in, and sometimes it's not going to be exact, but, put in as close of an estimate as you can. It's always better to estimate higher than lower as well. If it doesn't have quite what it's in there, again, in keeping with the whole not lying to ourselves, if you think, well, it could be 100 calories here or there, add those in. So, just sort of try to keep it as, close to that number as you can. Our main goal is to stay under it, because when you're putting it into the app at the end of the day, when you finish everything off, some of you may have already noticed this, instead of saying, that you finish your diary for this date, when you're beneath that number, it will say that you finished your diary for the day and you've reached your calorie goal, or you've gone under your calorie goal, which, although it isn't much, it is a nice little encouragement showing that you've done something right. Now, don't go too far. Don't, jump ahead and say, well, I'm only going to have 500 calories today, because the app won't register that. If you're too far off your goal, if you're supposed to be taking 2,000 and you're only doing like 1,500, then whenever you finish for the day, it's not going to register. It's not going to give you that little news feed saying that you finished your diary, because you're eating too few calories. And although some of you are going to be out there that you really want to go gung-ho with this and sort of jump ahead, try to stay on track and keep this slow progress going. Because if we've tried to do that, and I mean, all of us have done that, where we've gotten, really gung-ho and say, no, I really want to get this going, and sort of jump ahead. And inevitably, we sort of fall back, which is why you're doing this now. So hopefully, if we keep this nice and slow, it'll be at a good pace, and, we'll stick with it. Because if you do jump ahead, then, you might get to a point where you want to drop it, which is fine. You can drop back to where we are. But if you go too far ahead, then inevitably, just like anything else, you run the risk of saying, to hell with this, it's not working, and just sort of stopping or falling by the wayside. And it's going to be a lot harder to sort of get back into that groove, especially once we get a few weeks under our belt. So, stick with the food. Just sort of stay under your goal. Don't bother tracking fluids, and don't bother tracking condiments, things like that. I guess for the sake of this as well, if you're eating junk food and stuff, you should count that. If you've got things like mints or hard candy or something, unless you're eating a huge bucket of it, don't worry about those either. Because it is going to be minimal. But, just sort of use your judgment, be honest with yourself. And if you're looking at it saying, well, it's only a hard candy, but you've had 20 of them, then you should add that. But, regular foods, pretty much anything solid, just track that and hopefully stay under your goal as much as you can. So, and then at the end of the week, we'll do another weigh-in, and, we'll make another little adjustment. So that's pretty much it for this. I know it's, again, these tend to be, the weigh-in ones tend to be a little bit shorter because we don't really have a lot that we're talking about. I'm just sort of setting things up for the following week. I'm very glad that you've stuck with this so far for a week, and that, you've decided to keep on with this. Because, as we all know, it's generally one of those things where we say, well, I'll start tomorrow, or, I'll start it on Monday. And, sometimes even when we do start it, we don't tend to stick with it. Right? Either, we go too far and then we fall back, or we just can't seem to get things started, on a proper schedule. So, but we're sort of starting everything off properly now this week. You're already used to tracking your food, so all we need to do is make those tiny little adjustments here and there. And again, if you find that you're still hungry at the end of the day, and you've already hit your goal, then some of you are going to go over. And that's okay. It's going to happen. Don't get discouraged. Don't think that you're failing. Just be conscious of it and try to fix that, the next day, and say, okay, well, where did I get that, big influx of calories to do that? Another thing I wanted to talk about actually before I go is the time frame. There are going to be some of you that are watching this that work overnight. So, there's sort of that debate as to whether or not do it from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. The problem with that is, and I've tried both because I used to work overnights, is that you're constantly going back and trying to fix things, technically from the day before. So for the purposes of this program, we're going midnight to midnight. All right. So if you wake up at 8 o'clock at night to go to work, then, put that in as that day. And at midnight, while you're at work, that's, whenever your lunch is, that's the start of a new day. It's just going to make things much, much easier when you're tracking things. And in the long run, it doesn't really matter because you're still putting the same amount of calories in during a 24-hour period. When you're working overnight, it's much harder to sort of keep on target with that because, it's just during the day, of course, you don't get any sleep. Contrary to all you people out there that don't work overnights, you don't sleep during the day. Because you still have all the stuff that you need to do. So it's a little more difficult to sort of set your meals up properly. So adding to that, having to go back when you're doing your lunch at 2 a.m, having to, put in things from yesterday and then, repost your, sort of the end of day thing is just too much. And I found that when I was doing it, that there were so many mistakes and you were constantly posting and reposting and reposting. It just wasn't worth it. So for this, we're going to go midnight to midnight. I probably should have mentioned that in the first one through, but at least this way, we're sort of on track at the proper, when the proper week starts. So whatever time zone you're in, just do midnight to midnight. And for some of you, it's going to be, if you wake up really late, you may not eat anything until midnight the next day. So for the first couple of days, it might be a little bit wonky, but in general, it's going to even out, and it should be fine, and you'll stay on track with the rest of us, so you should be okay. So that's it for this video. I know, again, it's a little bit short, but we just sort of want to, thank you again and sort of get people on the right target for the week, get our way in there, and, see how this week goes, staying under our goal. It shouldn't be too hard for the majority of us because we're probably fairly close to that anyway. Like I say, if you're at a point when you're, constantly gaining, then it might be a little bit more difficult, but, you've got people here you can talk to. So, post a comment or, talk to us through MyFitnessPal if you've got people added on as friends. And, there's people there that we understand. We've been through it, and we'll be able to help. So until next time, thank you very much. If you like this video, hit the like button for me. And until next time, stay warm and fuzzy, and I'll see you in the... I'm going to try that one more time because I can't edit this out. I can, but it would look really, really stupid. So let's try this one more time and see if I can do it all the way through and maybe add in some vowels and consonants in the meantime. So thank you very much for watching this video. Once again, ignore that first part. If you liked it, hit the like button for me. And until next time, stay warm and fuzzy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.